Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Success Thursday this week with Jill Stott. Hey, Jill, welcome back.
Hey, Vasco, happy Thursday.
Absolutely. Happy
Thankful
Thursday.
Indeed. We should have it be more alliterative.
Thursday. Thankful Thursday. Indeed.
Thankful that tomorrow's Friday.
Yeah, thankfully, tomorrow is Friday. So, Jill, the Thursday is my favorite question of the day because, of course, we will debate what success is for a Scrum Master. But before we get into that, do share with us, what's your favorite retrospective format and why?
Okay, so this is going to be controversial. So I've used a lot of different formats. Recently, I've been using, actually, I would love any feedback on this idea. Retrospective on demand, where I encourage teams as we're going through our sprints, when you think of something they would love to discuss or dig in further, or maybe there's a problem, we have a little board and they put those Post-its on. And once we get X number of Post-its, then triggers a retrospective. We already have, it's basically a backlog. So rather than having like, oh, okay, what went wrong? I don't remember. That was 2 weeks ago. It's very focused. We have that and we discuss those and we create the action items. I don't know if that's a format, but I'm loving it. And I know that's anti the Scrum Guide because we aren't necessarily having them consistently at the end of every sprint. But the team likes it a lot. If you've ever been in a retrospective where nothing changed, it's the same, but we were just going through the motions, for me, that's waste. Why are we doing that? So, counterpoint, Vasco. Is that a bad idea?
No, I think it's perfect. And I would say that if we can get to a point where the team feels the responsibility to have those conversations, right? So now you say that, if we have X post, let's say if we have 5 Post-its on the retro board, we'll have a retro call and we will discuss this. But I think that if we can get the team to the point where they say, look, this point is big enough. We don't need to wait for anything. Let's have a conversation about this particular point. That's the spirit of the inspect and adapt philosophy, I guess you could call it, that underlies the whole Scrum process, right? Scrum is an inspect and adapt process. It's an empirical management process. And if we find that something is big enough to warrant some time to think, reflect, and come up with an experiment on how to solve it, then we should do it immediately. In fact, that was one of the, maybe we could call it one of the controversies when Kanban came up as a method, the Kanban method, that they were saying, no, why should we wait for the end of the sprint to have a demo, right? If the feature is done, let's demo it now. Why wait for 2-3 days or 5 days, whatever? Way back when the sprints used to be 30 days. So God knows how long you would wait before you do the demo. So I think that's a great example of the spirit of empirical management that underlies the Scrum framework, right? Whenever there's a topic that requires us to think and come up with an experiment, let's do it. But tell us a little bit more, Jill. How is it working? Is the team really getting into that rhythm of first coming up with the topics and then discussing the topics?
So it depends. So right now I'm working with multiple teams in different organizations. So it depends. Teams that are new to Agile and Scrum, it doesn't work very good because they are not used to that mindset. So if I only tried it once with a new team and I realized that's a mistake, it's better just to have this common cadence and introduce them to the whole idea behind it. And sometimes they're very reticent to even share because they're afraid of, getting yelled at or whatever by the managers. So, but with teams who've been doing Scrum for a while or Kanban or whatever, it works really good. And they kind of feel that they're ready to run, if you will, right? They've gone through the steps and the system and the habits, and now they're ready to have a little bit more freedom, if you will, like a horsey. I compare it to a horse. I don't know. Yeah.
That's actually a good point. So that's something, definitely a tip or a caveat for our listeners to take into account, that we might need to sense whether the team is ready to do this. But definitely one of the things I would worry about is exactly what you said. Like, people may feel, especially if they're new to Scrum or new to Agile, they may feel that, oh, this is too much. Like, why are we talking about these things all the time? Why don't we just, or some teams might even not be ready to have the retrospective conversation in the first place, right? That might be a job in itself for us as Scrum Masters, to get the team used to the process of improving all the time.
I like that. And thank you. I think we're on the same page, where as a new Scrum Master, okay, here's the 5 events. Let's immediately inject them into the team's schedule. That's not a very good approach. Take it from me, if I'm doing it the wrong way. Number 1 is reading the room, right? Talking with people, understanding where they're at. And like you said, let's start simple. And then if the retrospective seems like, they're really reticent or combative against it, chill. Let's start where we're at and then grow that capability.
Also, because the retrospectives are a very simple thing to build into just a random conversation by the water cooler, right? Like, hey, Anne, how was last week?
Yeah.
Right? Monday morning, everybody's coming in. We are all picking up a coffee from the coffee machine. Hey, Anne, how was last week? Oh, man, we had a problem. Pete, the PO, he was just absent all the time. I'm so fed up with that, right? And boom, there's a retro opportunity, right? So
I love it. Water cooler retro.
There you go. Right. And we, as Scrum Masters, we know the retro is not just a thing we do. It's a necessary process for a team that wants to get better. Now, the team doesn't necessarily need to be doing it consciously. They just need to be doing it, period. Right?
Yes. And there's something about when it's this scheduled meeting. And when I was a team member for 20 years, your mind just freezes up. Okay, everybody, say this. But when somebody asks me, hey, Jill, how did it go last week? It's natural. It just flows. It just comes out. I like that, Vasco. I'm going to write a book about that and make $1 million.
The no retro Scrum process.
Yes, but having it like the water cooler retro, that just being human beings and having conversations and listening to each other. What?
Yeah. So tip for all the parents out there, this does not work so well with teenagers, right? Because when I go to my teenagers and I ask, hey, how was the day at school? They said, it went. What did you do? Things.
Yeah. You have teenagers. How old are they? I do too.
Yeah. So youngest is 12, oldest 17. And they are in this phase where it's so much harder to get into this. Okay, open up the door for a little bit of conversation.
Don't tell me anything.
This is not the case at work, though. Most people at work are quite happy to go on about the stuff that is annoying them. So that's a plus for us as Scrum Masters.
And I think the teenagers, I'm assuming, when their peers ask them questions, they open up. It's because we're the bad parents. So don't work for your parents.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
Don't hire your kids. How's that?
All right, talking about parenthood. All right, the next question is success. So Jill, share with us, how do you define success for a Scrum Master?
So here's how I define success for a Scrum Master. It's the success of the team, how do you measure that? I love metrics as long as they're used for good and not for evil, which is a slippery slope. The number one thing is customer satisfaction, right? Are you maintaining the customer base? Are they tickled? Are they happy with their products? Are you growing your customer base? If you're a for-profit, measure that. A lot of times that's the last thing they look at, but that's really what matters. And then number 2, happy employees. I have worked in jobs where we were miserable, and first of all, it was terrible. We had a lot of attrition. Some of our best people left. We were demoralized, I guess, if you will. And when you're working at 2 a.m., you're going to miss a lot of defects. You're going to write a lot of bad code. Happy employees, like they're innovative, they're excited, they want to work together. So taking a read on, hey, do we feeling better this month versus last month? No, I'm mad because of this. Let's work on that. So are my employees, is my team happy? Are they feeling good about what they're doing? They feel positive? Are my customers happy? So that's the baseline. And then if you've nailed those, Scrum Master, high five yourself, seriously, and go buy yourself a donut. I mean, that sounds so easy, and it is not. That is and then how do you get to that point? That's the hard part, right? It's great to talk about it, but it's easier said than done.
One thing that you said that I would like to highlight is start measuring these things. And it sounds so deceptively easy to say start measuring, but very often we don't even know, okay, but how do I measure customer satisfaction? Oh, and by the way, who's my customer? And some teams are so disconnected from the real life of their products that they don't even have a clue who's using their products. Now, if you do have an opportunity to talk to the people who use your products, do that. Like that's amazing. That's the best way to learn. You might not like what they tell you, but still listen because it's going to be important whether you like it or not. And then the second thing, happy employees. And obviously, if we think about this as, we're working with a team, the whole team needs to be happy, right? It's not like, Jeff is happy because everybody loves him and he's the hero, and everybody else is unhappy because they're not seen, or, they work overtime to do whatever tasks Jeff has given them, right? So like that aspect, it might seem also very simple, but just having that conversation, asking the team, like, for example, this week, from 1 to 10, how did we feel? Mm-hmm. Right? Even starting with something as simple as that, and then maybe finding through conversation there are some aspects that we need to pay attention and measuring those instead. Like that's for me super critical. And these two things that you mentioned, customer satisfaction and a happy team, they seem so simple, but it's quite surprising how infrequently I see these things being measured in teams today.
Yes. It's all the other stuff, like, was your stand up 15 minutes or less? Yes. Okay. Check. Like what? That's not what it's all about. But yes, I like the idea of kind of circling back to the retrospective. A little story. My husband's a software developer, and he was doing Scrum, and they had their Scrum call. It was virtual, right? Working from home. It was just a few months ago. And they were on Zoom or whatever. And the Scrum Master hadn't done this before, but he created this little thing in a shared whiteboard that said, it was a line. It was your happiness thing. So it was like frowny face, medium face, and then happy face. And then each one of the developers put their little icon of themselves on that scale. And this guy doesn't love touchy-feely stuff, but he's like, come here, look at this. This is the closest thing ever. Like, I've been doing that for years. But I've been telling you this forever, but whatever, that's all right. And he thought it was so cool. And I thought he would think it was corny. And no, and the whole team loved it. And it turned out it was such an opportunity to focus. Step one, how'd you feel? And then we can have the conversation and then put words to it and labels, and then create the solutions, because human beings are emotional creatures. And sometimes I feel something and I don't know why. And having the opportunity of having a really awesome Scrum Master who is facilitating that conversation, we actually can make positive change within even a single meeting. I think did I go off the rails? I forgot the original question.
That was
excited.
That was a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Jill.
Yes, my pleasure.
Part of a successful Scrum Master job is to help the product owner. Tomorrow we explore that critical role in Scrum, the product owner role. Tune in to learn about the product owner anti-patterns, what you can do to help the product owner, and a real-life example of what a great product owner is and what made it so. Tomorrow on our Friday Product Owner episode. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.